Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all feeling perky on this spring forward Sunday morning. I didn't even hear my alarm. My husband had to wake me up. And that's the truth of it. The title of my talk today, according to our Lenten booklet, truth is the word for Sunday. And I've been kind of following that a little bit for my talk titles through the month of March this year. Although his truth of it and my truth of it are two different concepts. They're not in opposition, mind you. They just take a different path. And I've noticed that each week when I sit down to make my talk notes, that there are certain teachings that seem to repeat themselves over and over again. And our Lenten journey each year is no different than that, and it's not really a lot different than the Advent season leading up to Easter being born and this Lenten season of being reborn, that things are about to change or merge. Things are always changing and opening up new possibilities for us. Our opening song, Put a Little Love in Your Heart, is one of the major things that I talk about often. Put a little love in your heart. I talked all month of February about love, and particularly self-love. But what is the Lenten journey? What's it all about anyway? And it's about being born again. It's celebrated in the spring each year as the earth is being reborn. Is it any wonder that that's when we celebrate Easter and the rebirthing of our spiritual side? Our ancient ancestors didn't think there was, that it was any different, that one had to do with the other, that because the earth is reborn, that we too have the ability to regenerate and to be reborn through our spiritual practices, through our deciding to try a new way of life or a new diet or a new way of thinking. All of these things lead to that being born again. So not only did our ancient ancestors think that these two symbols, Easter, the resurrection of the Christ, and the resurrection of the earth each spring, that they think that they are related. But throughout the world, in different cultures and in different belief patterns, there are stories about colorful eggs at this time of year, in the springtime. It is a universal symbol of new life. And I'm not going to repeat any of those stories today, but they are worldwide. But no matter what story we tell about the egg, it's clearly a symbol of the potential of new life. We like to color them up in our own tradition or our own culture. We boil the eggs and we put them in colored water. And if we're very creative, we may use a little brush to decorate them in different ways. I've never been very good at that type of art myself, but I know that some people are. Springtime is a symbol of new life. Easter and the resurrection are symbols of that new life. But how do we take those symbols? How do we take that idea of a resurrection, of being born again, and apply them to our everyday lives? It's a great concept when we think about being reborn. We do this every New Year's Eve when we want to make New Year's resolutions. But how do we actually take the ideas and implement them into our lives so that we are feeling reborn, that we are feeling refreshed, I think is an appropriate term to use there. So in reading the Lent booklet today of Release and Renew, the author actually does talk about times of darkness. And the celebration of the spring equinox this next week is a celebration of that. It's a celebration of going from the dark days into the lighter days. But have you ever noticed in your own life when you're going through hard times, going through a darkness, that there always seems to be a resurrection that follows it? And this is a recurring thing too, because it always takes some kind of darkness, some kind of turmoil, some tumultuous event in our lives to wake us up, to make us to live differently or do things differently. The darkness isn't to be ignored or to get out of as quick as you can, but to gently move through it. As we've moved through these winter months, they actually seem to have slipped by pretty fast. It seems like just the other day I was cleaning ice off of my driveway and snow the next week. It just seems like it was yesterday, and here it is. I've got daffodils in my yard. The sun's coming out. I see my yard turning green, the ground, the grass, it's not really grass yet, weeds, whatever you call it, ground covering. And just a few days ago, when I was out doing yard work, it was just barely starting to turn green. And so the earth really is being reborn again right before our very eyes. Are we paying attention? Take this time last year, for example. Do you know that today, or rather tomorrow, because the days change each year on the week, the day of the week it is, but last year on this week was the last time we had a Sunday morning service in person. It has been a complete year today. Wow, would you ever thought that we would have done this for a year? Remember when we first made the decision that we needed to close it down and go virtual just for a few weeks so that we can flatten the curve? And here it is a year later. But I am beginning to sense that we are being reborn. It is time to be born again. I felt it at the first of the year that it wouldn't be long, until we could come back together. And the idea of opening the church again just really came to the forefront in my mind this week. That divine guidance just urging me on. It's time to open the church, And then I found out, actually, this happened on the same day. What preceded that feeling was I found out that I was eligible to get the vaccine. I wasn't eligible in the first round, but I became eligible on Tuesday. And I looked it up and I made Ken and I an appointment for this coming week. It's a drive-through. And so we should be ready to go. And I hope that you are too. I can't wait for us to get back together. Because I don't know about you, but this year has seemed somewhat dark. It's been a trip for me personally, as your minister, as your non-techno minister, whose prime purpose is to bring you a spiritual message each week. It got thrown into the techno world of doing Facebook Live and learning to Zoom, which I knew how to Zoom, but I had never hosted one before. And all of this new stuff, that it's been a trip. Y'all remember that first service we used doing these Facebook Lives and how many mistakes were made along the way. And it was really a trip of a year, wouldn't you say? And all that space that was between us, I love that we can come together on the computer, on Facebook Live, on Zoom for the coffee and fellowship, on Zoom for our book club, on Zoom next week for our annual meeting. I love that we can do this and come together. It is a way for us to connect while not being in close proximity with one another. But times they are changing. It's not just that it's springtime. It's not just the potential of new life in those colorful eggs, but it's time for us as a church to be reborn, to celebrate what we have together, what we share together, which is that love, that genuine Christ love and excitement and enthusiasm that make us Unity Church of the Ozarks. May 2nd is a few weeks away, yes, and Easter will have come and gone by then. But I want to start today, by initiating that excitement for us reopening. And I was looking over last year's annual membership meeting minutes the other day, and how we had announced all of these great things we had planned in last year's visioning workshop, which happened last February. And this was all in the minutes. And I'm like, oh yeah, we were going to do this. We were going to do that. And guess what? We still can. We still can move forward into putting those things. It's a year later, yes, but the time is now. And so I'm really looking forward to being born again in that way. I believe that this past year has been a time of being in the darkness somewhat, because we've had to stumble along and learn how to do things a new way. But mostly it is a manifestation in our own minds about whether it's the darkness or the light that we're in. It's how we think about an experience that determines how we experience the experience. For me, when I say I had to learn all this stuff, and a lot of the pressure that I endured through all of that was self-made. That's stuff Elise was doing to herself. I got to learn this. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do the other. And probably everything would have been fine had I just went straight Facebook Live to begin with. But everything that we go through in life is a learning experience. And so I welcome us to just take a deep breath right now and look back over the last year. What have we learned from it? What have we learned? How can we be reborn into this new life, into this springtime experience, bringing with this past year with us? Well, one of the things I thought about when I think of Unity Church of the Ozarks is our book club that we have on Wednesday afternoons. I thought, I want to keep doing this on Zoom. It is so easy. You can just walk in the other room and close the door and turn your computer on, and boom, you're in a room with everybody and having discussion with everybody. And it is so much fun and so enlightening, and it feels good. And I'm not spending all that money on gas and traveling and getting there and back. And actually, it's been a more successful Wednesday class thing than any that I ever had in person. So we will continue to have an online presence as well as be in person. We're also planning on continuing to be here on Facebook Live once we go back in person. So you still have the option of checking in on Facebook Live, or you can come be in the sanctuary with us. One of the main things that I teach you on a regular basis is that we are creators in our own lives. And that's the truth of it. We are creators in our own life. So in the Gospel according to Matthew, from the 17th chapter, Jesus said that we only need the faith of a mustard seed, the perfect faith of a mustard seed. That we can tell this mountain move from there to over here, and it will. That's a visual, oh my God, I can hardly believe that kind of thing. But I recently decided to do a silly experiment that I want to tell you about this morning. I'm just going to make a note. Okay. when Ken and I first started dating, and back in the early days, we used to like to play games. We'd go out and play pool, or we'd sit in and play Scrabble. We've always liked to play games. I've always liked to play games. I played pool for many years before Ken came into my life. And I remember years ago, it was probably about 25 years ago, my friend, I called him Brother David because he was like a brother to me, told me that if I would actually learn how to play pool and do it well, that it would be a lot more fun because I wasn't that good at it. You know, I'd like to just go and hit the ball around some, and I hardly ever won. And so I took his advice to heart, and I asked another friend that's pool sharp if he would teach me how to play pool better. And he said, you can't tell anybody I'm tutoring you, and meet me at this private place so nobody will see it, and I'll do it. And so I met with him several times, and he helped me to better my game. And it is, my friend Brother David was right. It is a lot more fun when you win. So after we went into seclusion last year, Ken and I had kind of gotten away from playing games through all the seminary and everything that we'd been through. We had forgotten that we like to play. After we went into seclusion, after this past year started, Ken had the idea that he wanted to play games again, and he brought out our domino set that we had, and we started playing Yahtzee, and we played backgammon sometimes. And, you know, I just kind of had this laissez-faire attitude about the games. And then I noticed over time that Ken was winning most of the games, just constantly. And I remember my friend, Brother David, telling me, games are funner if you win. And so I decided to run a little experiment. And I noticed that whether I won or lost a game often had to do with the mood that I was in. And so this experiment has to do with the game of dominoes in particular. So I noticed that when I drew my tiles of domino, that if I celebrated them as I turned them over and looked at them, oh boy, no matter what the tile was, no matter what, to celebrate and be excited about the hand that I got, not knowing how the hand was going to play out. And I found that, first of all, I was in a better mood. And then I realized that it had to go beyond just looking at and celebrating the tiles that I had. I began to think about what I wanted Ken to play. Well, the domino, the type of domino or the number that I needed him to play in order for me to score on it next. And a surprising thing happened. I began to win. Time after time after time, I began to win these games, and just winner of the night. I was winning all the games we played in a particular night for nights on end. And a few days into it, I didn't go on forever with this, but a few days into the experiment, a friend of mine, Ariana Platten, I think is her last name, a Unity minister, recommended this documentary for us to watch. And the name of the documentary is called Superhuman. And in this documentary, they are attempting to scientifically explain how we are creators of our own lives and how it is mind over matter and all of this. Now, the documentary didn't convince me. I was already convinced, and I have been for some time, but it was an interesting watch. And I just had the idea about 3/4 of the way through it that I needed to admit to Ken what I had been doing in the games and why I had been winning. And, you know, I said, it wasn't as if I was trying to control your brain so much as I was just trying to control what was going to come for me, what the payoff for me was going to be out of it. Ken immediately began making jokes about me controlling his brain and acting silly and all of that. But maybe I was trying to control him. Maybe I was trying to control his mind. But not really. I just really wanted to win because my friend Brother David was right. I got ahead of myself. Oh, I noticed that after several nights in a row of it, that it wasn't as fun anymore to be in control and be the creator. And it had become somewhat predictable that if I approached it with this mood and with this mindset of what I wanted to see manifest every time, it took the surprise factor out of it. And I even began feeling a little sorry for Ken, for Ken. And so, I quit doing it so much because I proved the point I can, but do I really want to be in that much control? Do I want to win every time? I want to win at life every time, not necessarily with the games with my husband. But that's really me just making light of the point that I'm trying to make. Over this past year, over the last few months in particular, several of us have gone through some really trying times. I've had 3 major surgeries. My own husband was in the hospital. We've had other things going on throughout our community, and it's been some physically challenging times for us as a congregation. It may seem like a dark night of the soul to us. Mark Anthony Lord, the author of the Lenten booklet, wrote that it is darkest before the dawn. It is darkest before the dawn. And he went on to write that now it's time for a final deep cleansing of the consciousness. A final deep cleansing of the consciousness. I noticed that yesterday was the new moon, which is a time of rebirth. Every new moon of us designing and being creative and what are we going to create in our lives. We get to do this rebirth thing every month with the new moon, and next weekend is the equinox, which is just the equal amount of dark and light. That's the concept. It didn't actually happen that way up here in Northwest Arkansas exactly, but that's when the earth is exactly straight up and down, so that we will start going into the longer days with more light, which I really enjoy. It's time for a final deep cleansing of our consciousness. Are you ready? The next scripture I want to share with you today comes to us from the Gospel according to Luke. This too is about a mustard seed. What is the kingdom of God like? Someone asked Jesus. And to what should I compare it? And Jesus said, it is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in the garden. It grew and became a tree, and the birds of the air made nest in its branches. Plant the seed, grow the tree, and see the fruits of the tree come to life. And that's where we're at right now in the springtime, this new moon, equinox, coming back together as a church. I'm really so excited about it. To just be exploding with new life. It's time for us to go to the truth of it and to gain new insights. So in what ways in particular will we be resurrected into new life as we release the old and embrace the new? Release the old and embrace the new. That's what time of year it is. Oh.